Hi, this is Steve Bechtel with another one of my tips from my office here. Um, Most of what I'm covering in these tips is stuff we've done in articles, but I want to make sure and reiterate some of the lessons and make sure that we're covering all of the most important things. What I'm going to talk about today is strength and the reason that we work in the set and rep ranges that we do. When a lot of us start weight training, it's 3 sets of 10. You're kind of going in there learning the movements, and you're doing basic things that usually your friends teach you. A lot of our experience in training, and especially this most recent generation, comes from bodybuilding. And so when you go into the gym, you'll see a lot of people doing curls or triceps presses or things like that. Those sorts of exercises have a pretty limited value, and especially when you have a limited amount of training time, we want to stay away from doing things that don't give us a whole lot of benefit. And when I look at resistance training for rock climbing, I'm looking for two things. One, I'm looking for big bang for your buck out of the exercises. And two, I'm looking for a neurological overload that helps us not only learn to initiate movement with the muscle groups that we're using, but it also is going to cause a hormonal release. And this is probably the biggest benefit. We talk about strength training as hangboard work, doing a few pull-ups and things like that. But climbers, and especially female climbers or climbers that are older, like 35 years or older, we start to be limited by our hormonal profile in climbing more than almost anything. And so things like front squats, deadlifts, heavy presses, those things cause a big growth hormone, testosterone release. And when we use those exercises, we can then benefit in our hangboarding by having that extra amount of hormones in the system. And that leads to better gains, better recovery, and everything. And so combining these heavy strength exercises with our hangboarding, it has nothing to do with thinking that a deadlift is going to make you a stronger climber, or that you're going to get big muscles or anything like that. We use very limited loading at very high intensities. And so when I look at this, we try to keep the sets and reps fairly low and try to fit them in with the normal climbing session. So this is what we're looking at now. So when we look at set and rep schemes, one of the big rules, and we learned this from Easy Strength, is to keep your sets pretty low and keep the reps, the total reps in an exercise for a workout around 10. So a lot of times we'll do 5 sets of 2, 3 sets of 3, 2 sets of 5 on an easier day, or a ladder of like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And keeping in that rep range where that, say like the 2 reps in the 5x2 is pretty challenging. Make sure that we are overloading ourselves neurologically, and it keeps us from getting into that hypertrophy range, because you don't want to spend a lot of time bodybuilding as a rock climber. So then when we put this together, you're going to be doing 5 sets of 2 deadlifts. So let's say you do a deadlift. One of the things that we want to do is to make sure that we're working on our stabilizers and our mobility. And we do that as a rest period between the deadlifts. And so you do a deadlift, and then we'll do what's called like a kneeling hip flexor stretch. A stretch exercise or a mobility exercise takes about a minute after the deadlift. And when we're working at this intensity, we still need more recovery in between. I don't want you to sit around and read a magazine. And so that's when we'll do some hangboard stuff. And so then you can do a hang. 5 to 10 seconds. And this is when we're doing strength hangboard work. working on your grips, you know, the whole hangboard thing. I'm a big fan of the high intensity, low volume hangboarding. And so then maybe you would go through this 5 times, and that would be half your workout. And then maybe you could do a pressing exercise that would go along with it. But we're sticking in this low load range. There's a time for low rep range, high load range. There's a time for higher reps, but it's very specific. And when we're doing higher reps, we want it to be in those climbing related movements. When we're doing general strength training, I can't see a good argument for isolative movements or high repetition movements. There's schools of thought that go that direction, and I'm not saying they're wrong. I just know that I'm right. So reps around 10, pair them with mobility exercises, maybe a little bit of hangboard work, or just a whole lot of mobility work in between, 2 to 4 minutes, and then work back into your resistance training if you're not doing your strength training combined with the weights. I hope this helps.